Hello, and welcome to the Awake and Empowered Radio. I'm Jeffrey Jaxen. With me is Ethann Fox, and we are both delighted to have on the line Michael J. Murphy. Michael is an award-winning director, producer, political activist, and the president of the Coalition Against Geoengineering. His work focuses on issues that go beyond the interest of the corporate mainstream media and includes originating and co-producing the groundbreaking documentaries Why in the World Are They Spraying and What in the World Are They Spraying? Soon to be producing the third installment, Who in the World is Spraying? And you can find that at whointheworldisspraying.com. Michael will be speaking at the Awake And Empowered Expo. That's happening October 11th through the 13th, 2013 in Detroit, Michigan. Michael, how are you today?
Oh, doing great. How about you? I'm
doing excellent. Michael, we're very grateful. First off, I want to say thank you. We're very grateful for the work you're doing, activating the public on the issue of geoengineering. Your work is tireless. Your films are top notch, and your research is impeccable. And I think that will really stand apart from all the information out there to give a great groundwork for anybody looking into this issue.
Oh, great. And, just getting the word out about this issue, and of course, geoengineering is very damaging not only to our ecosystems around the world. We're seeing a collapse of our ozone and a number of other things that really affect all life on the planet. So I firmly believe right now that this is the most important issue that we have at hand and need to address. So I think just getting the word out, to the people in your circle of influence is probably the most important thing right now.
I couldn't agree more. And we're looking forward to Who in the World is Spraying. I'm looking at the website here, and reading from the website, I think this is excellent. It says, we believe that we'll quickly see an end to the day-to-day geoengineering of our planet and the restoration of nature and humanity. So the issue is mobilizing the people, getting the awareness out there, getting the knowledge out there. So there's a conversation going about what's going on and who's doing it. And I think obviously you're the front of the line with that. But there's a lot of people standing right next to you doing these, doctors and other people in professional industries that are blowing the whistle, so to speak.
Yeah, and we think that's definitely the key. And with programs so large, you're looking at a lot of different corporations and a lot of different individuals who are involved, many of which profit probably greatly from these programs. So this is probably the most challenging out of any film because it absolutely has to be 100% accurate. We have to double check, triple check, and make sure that everything's, perfect with it. And, it could take a lot longer than the other films. And we're going to take our time and, again, make sure everything's accurate because it's, I think, the most important thing that we can do when releasing any film is, A, the credibility and the accuracy of the information. So I think we're going to find out some very interesting things. And we'll be revealing those.
Yeah, I agree. Again, the truth, once you get it out there, it stands on its own. It doesn't need to be defended. And I think you're doing a great job putting it out there.
Yes.
And Michael, could you go over a little bit of what you'll be covering at the conference in October in Detroit?
Probably just going over the film Why in the World Are They Spraying? And Barry Kolsky, and I started that, probably about, 14 months ago. We released the film in August. I think it was August at the Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails conference. And the film's taken off. It's won several different awards. And I think we really hit a new market with that film. The first film, we did. What in the World Are They Spraying was effective because I think it was one of the first credible, well put together films, and woke a lot of people up to this. We're getting close to critical mass in Hawaii, where I live. About a third of the time in Maui. When we first went there with What in the World Are They Spraying, very few people knew, maybe 5 people. Most of that island is awaken. So we have not only public support, we also have political support with some ordinances that some people are working on the island to actually ban these programs.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. It's all about raising the consciousness and getting people to look up and question and getting the knowledge out there. And that's interesting because I didn't know the major part of Hawaii was awake to this.
Yeah, it's a big portion, and again, there are a number of agendas associated with the programs. Some may be good, but we are aware that some, and geoengineers even talk about the risks. And those are pretty substantial. So from the weather control aspect, you could look at it from essentially two different ways. Anytime you put an aerosol into the atmosphere, it's going to diminish rainfall. It's going to change wind patterns. So I think geoengineers now are going into the dialogue talking about how they would kind of alter that in direct storms and direct rain into certain areas. But one of the more interesting things that I've learned in the past couple of weeks, geoengineers are now having dialogue about the countries that will benefit from these programs, and those are the countries that would support if they enact the legislation for it. So I think some of those benefits are rain, the ability to grow food, and that's a concern. And we just met with Catherine Austin-Fitz. We interviewed her over the weekend for the film, and she really opened up my mind, and she really challenged my belief system in a number of different ways. So she discussed the financial motives and what the implications were. So I think we're going to be including that into the film.
Oh yeah, Catherine does. She's Solari.com. She does some amazing work there. I've been following her for years, and I got to say, I've listened to a lot of interviews with her, and she also is for me, she would be very intimidating to interview. I'm a little scared because she really challenges the interviewer and tries to empower the crowd.
Yeah, it was very empowering, and that's what I like, because anytime, you move on to a project, and for me, a lot of people consider me as an expert, and I consider myself more of an investigator with it. And, she taught me a whole lot during the interview, so it was, for me, it was a good experience.
Okay, now I want to get in the subject of geoengineering and what exactly they are spraying. We know there's disrupted weather patterns. There's reports now of global dimming. The soil and rain samples all show elevated aluminum, barium, strontium. They have patents on record for the geoengineering and the I guess you would want to say the ways they do it. And also, they've talked publicly, when I say they, the Bill Gates of the world, and also David Keith at TEDx had a talk on geoengineering. So it seems like it's kind of in our face, but it's still pretty difficult to get people to understand this, or to believe it for that matter.
In terms of the lakes, I'm not sure if that's an accurate test. And the reason, of course, gravity will pull down, if a metal is in there. But according to Francis, what Dane has found in the people doing the test were the amounts of aluminum, barium, the primary ingredients listed in a number of geoengineering patents, and also what geoengineers are proposing are showing up in just massive amounts in our rain. So that's a concern. I'm not sure, again, if the lake test would be that accurate. I know that Dane had tested what appeared to be a film on a pond after what he said was a spray day. And it was actually by the lab called sludge, and I guess sludge is defined as dirt, but it was actually a film on the top, and that was very high. And the reason I say that, if you test dirt, and after we released the first film, we had people coming in, with testing their soil, saying, "Oh my God, we have massive amounts of aluminum and barium," and those particles and those elements should be in our soil. It's very common. It's very natural. According to Francis, he said 0 should be in our rain, but due to some industry, we might see numbers in the single digits of aluminum, but we're seeing things in the thousands, that's now a common reality.
I've got several questions for you, Michael. First of all, I want to just back up a little bit because obviously not all of our listeners are familiar with geoengineering. As you mentioned earlier, people find it very surprising this could even be going on. So can you just give us a brief description of what exactly is a chemtrail and how do they differ from contrails?
Sure, you betcha. And in geoengineering, the definition is it's the artificial modification of the Earth's climate. So there are a number of scientists, corporations, and individuals that want to alter the composition, again, of our environment. So there are a number of different schemes. For instance, iron fertilization. Geoengineers are talking about and actually admitting that they're putting iron into our oceans. And what that apparently does is creates an algae bloom, which changes the CO2 content in our ocean. Now, I'm not sure about the implications of that and really haven't focused on that, but getting into what many people call chemtrails and aerosol trails, a condensation trail is, I guess it's similar to when we breathe in cold weather. And when you go outside in the wintertime in cold regions, you'll see your breath, that breath quickly dissipates. And before the 90s, it was pretty rare to see long trails in our sky. Today, it's a common reality. And we see these long trails, they do not dissipate. And they spread out and create an artificial cloud cover. And that's what many people are calling a chemtrail. There is a thing called persistent contrail. And depending on atmospheric conditions, we might see a trail that could last a little bit longer in the sky. But there's no question geoengineers, according to Barry Kolsky, are now admitting that they've started these just on small scale. What is small scale? I'm not sure what that means. But I don't want these metals dumped into my air, in the air that we're breathing.
You mentioned that aluminum and barium are naturally do occur in our soil. Can you just give us a quick overview about what are the implications of having aluminum, barium, strontium, and whatever else sprayed into our atmosphere in terms of the effects on human beings and vegetation and so on?
Well, in terms of human health, we for the first film, we interviewed Dr. Bourne, and she's an aluminum toxicity specialist. That's her practice that she focuses on. And as many people know, aluminum-related illnesses such as Alzheimer's, ADD, other aluminum-related illnesses have been going through the roof, just greatly increasing. So aluminum, she said, is highly reactive if it's sprayed in its free form, and that's what's being proposed. And because of that, it's very difficult to remove out of your system. So it will build up, and just aluminum alone, she stated, would decrease our immune system, which would lead to cancers and a bunch of other illnesses. What we're also finding, again, is very high amounts of barium, very high amounts of strontium. Barium is very toxic. It decreases our immune system. It also it's a desiccant. So many people have noticed, including myself, on heavy spray days when the trails are up there, I get very thirsty. I have a dry mouth. Other people complain of headaches, nausea, burning eyes, symptoms such as that. And I've spoken to some emergency room physicians who have told me that during heavy spray days, they see people come in with those symptoms, but also because barium increases our blood pressure, they see an increase of heart attacks and strokes. And strontium, many people thought that strontium was the strontium-90. According to Francis Mangels, he did further tests. He found out it was not the radioactive strontium, but that also does have an effect as well, and it should be in our air at those levels.
Mm-hmm. And do you know of any ways that we can remove these toxins from our soil, such as, I don't know if you are familiar with the use of soil bacteria or mycelium to mitigate oil spills and also to pull toxins out of out of soil. Is there any way that you know of to remove these toxins from soil?
Well, I believe that nature has an answer for everything that's unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually kind of a long process. A friend of mine, Morgan Carey, who does organic gardens for people here in the Los Angeles area, said that oyster mushrooms are
Mm-hmm.
very effective for removing heavy metals out of the soil, and I guess you can still eat them. Apparently, they will transform and take out the toxicity. So that's one way. Other ways, I'm not sure yet, but that's an area that I'll be looking into.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Stamets. Have you heard of him?
I haven't.
Okay. His website is fungi, I believe fungi.com, and he's come up with all kinds of solutions to use mushrooms in the removal of oil spills and various chemical disasters and so on. And I think that may be a possible solution, because I know that mycelium in the soil can actually, they actually do eat the chemicals and basically make them inert. So that's an option that I was curious about, if that would work in this case. Do you think that chemtrails are really entirely about geoengineering, or do you think there could be another reason, such as psychological control or population control or something like that? I mean, do they know that they can use these tools as a way to slow down the growth and awakening of people, or do you think that that's just sort of a side effect that's happening without their knowledge?
Well, I think there are a number of agendas, many of which I'm going to look into, but I think the issue of prudency is very important, and what we're trying to do is, awaken people to these programs, and it depends on what your audience is, and what I mean by that is Hawaii is a very conscious, awakened community, so we talk about, when I speak there, some deeper issues that the audience is more receptive to. In other areas, for instance, in Why in the World Are They Spraying, we really looked at the financial motives and the money that can be made by controlling our weather. And obviously, if you take a region, there's a drought there due to geoengineering, Monsanto, other genetically modified seed companies make a ton of money. But what we found, I interviewed a trader from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and he was talking about weather derivatives, and that was very interesting. And weather derivatives, essentially, they're a way to offset risk for a company based on adverse weather conditions. So the example that he used in the film was, and I'll get to the point after I explain this, but he stated, he said, let's say if it's a gas company that requires, let's say 70 days to be below 30 in the wintertime to break even for a profit, what they will do is invest in these derivatives to offset the risk. The example that really hit me was the example of a seed company. And he said, let's say you're a seed company and you have a crop that has $5 million worth of seeds. However, you invest in $10 million of these weather derivatives, you actually make money if the crop fails. So it's essentially, I'm not saying everybody who trades these derivatives is in the inside, they know the weather agenda, but based on the which we didn't discuss, weather control is very real. Been going on for a very long time, and I think it's safe to assume that people are in the know, certain people that may be higher up in the companies. And those people, if they have the playbook with the weather, the earning potential is literally limitless. So it's a very effective way to consolidate power into both monetary and political into the hands of the few, really at the expense of many around the world. And the reason I brought that up was it depends on your audience and how deep you go. And what I've learned is some people are just introduced to this. And when they learn of this, the reaction can be very could be a very fearful reaction, and we never want to induce fear into anybody. I think fear is very debilitating. But what my goals are is to empower people to start talking about this, to having dialogue, and essentially get these programs ended, so that we can we can resume having a natural balance on the earth. And I think that's what the overall goal is, and that's very important.
I used to be heavily involved in the financial market, so I can confirm what you're talking about. It seems a little counterintuitive to people who may not be familiar with trading derivatives and so on that you were discussing earlier, that you can actually make money if the price goes down. And so that makes a lot of sense. Now, do you suppose that geoengineering is being strategically used to cause some of the hurricanes and tornadoes and adverse weather that we've been having, or do you think that that's just an unintended consequence of this, or is just happening naturally, or do you even know?
My belief on that is probably a little bit of both. And the reason I believe that, I spoke with meteorologist Scott Stevens, who was in our film. He was a weatherman for over 20 years, an award-winning weatherman. And he looked at the storm that went into New York, and I think it was Sandy. Was it Sandy?
Yes.
Fall. And he said he was looking at that, and he saw, trails right before the storm took just about a 90-degree turn and went right into New York. So he firmly believes that that was used. And a lot of people ask, what would the agenda be behind that? And I really don't have an absolute answer on that, but I do know that disasters are very profitable for certain corporations that come in and rebuild. There might be political objectives. There are a number of reasons, and we can speculate on those. What we really want to do in the next film is get definitive answers. We want to get whistleblowers and people that are on the inside. I'm planning on interviewing David Keith. I'm going to call him. I've interviewed him before. He's considered to be one of the world's most recognized geoengineers. So hopefully we'll have a good dialogue with him, and be able to produce a film that will just be something that will get these programs stopped.
I'd like to cut in and back up what you're saying. It does depend on who you're talking to. Your audience is essential. And in addition, the mainstream media has a dialogue going that the weather cannot be controlled. Weather weapons aren't available, but Ben Livingston, 1966, Naval Weapons Laboratory, was controlling storms that long ago, and that is on record. And as you'll see, there's typically the military application first, and then it goes to the private sector, as it did with the weather modification. In addition to that, Dr. Nick Begich, I know, Michael, you've interviewed him. He's an expert on HAARP arrays, and those are on the ground in Alaska and now other places, and those are being used to steer the weather, among other things, I believe.
Well, it would definitely appear. I mean, there's no question that our weather is definitely off balance. We've had, according to Scott, snow in Miami, the fluctuations in our weather and our jet stream. And what was interesting, Nick Begich was talking about just a minor fluctuation in the jet stream, in the enormous effect that it could have downstream. So he spoke about a jet stream taking probably a 30-degree alteration. He believed that it was from HAARP, and he said this was up, I think, in Canada or perhaps in Alaska. And he said that they had, due to that minor change in the jet stream, they were having tornadoes in Orlando. It was something that was very uncommon. So I think, without a doubt, that could be used. I think there's also, in one of the areas that we covered in the film was the warfare applications of this. And,
yes.
There's no question weather control technology does exist. Like you stated, there was a treaty back in the 70s, and it was called the NMOD Treaty. And essentially it was a treaty that would ban countries from using this as a weapon of war during wartime periods, I believe. And he spoke about an exemption that certain countries have, and that the exemption was this: a country can use this technology over their own soil. But after talking to, again, former weatherman Scott Stevens and Nick Baggage had a lot of incredible information, it's very easy to, let's say, start engineering a storm over our soil, over U.S. soil, and affect, whether, in Europe or even in Africa, according to them. So that kind of threw that treaty out the window, and I think that's one of the reasons that some of the countries are getting, getting away with this. And it's interesting because geoengineers are talking about global governance, about creating this centralized power, this consolidated power, to overlook these programs. And I think, in some senses, if you have somebody who is perhaps has incredible integrity, I don't think power centralized always is necessarily a bad thing. However, when you have people that have motives that perhaps are to gain power for the purpose of whether it's greed or selfishness or to fill some hole that they have, then I think we're getting into a dangerous area. And there's a lot of speculation on that, but it does appear that, the amount of money that can be made and the power that this can give certain individuals is concerning to a lot of people.
Have you ever heard about Sherry Edwards?
I think her name was she the Air Force?
No. She's a woman who works in a field called bioacoustic biology, and she's one of the presenters we have coming out to our expo. And one of the things that particularly, and it's a completely new revolutionary area of health. And one of the things that really interests me about her is she says that she has a way to resolve and mitigate the adverse side effects, physical and psychological, of chemtrails. Using sound vibration or something like that. I'm not entirely familiar with how she does it, but she can actually analyze. She has computer software that can analyze by a person's voice what exactly is physically wrong with them, and then produce some sort of a vibration that will resolve that issue. We'll be interviewing her down the line, so we'll have a better idea. I'm going to ask her those questions, but I'm really interested to see, because for me, I always like to take a solution-based approach to everything. I don't like to just complain at the problem and say, okay, well, they're spraying stuff in the sky, now what? I'd like to take a look at, well, how can we mitigate or overcome that problem so that we're not being affected by it? So that's, something that I'm very, very interested in.
I think I would agree with you probably 100%. And when you make a film, many people go back and say, wow, I wish I would have done, this differently. And what in the world are they spraying? I think we needed more solutions-based. It was a new subject to us, and it still pretty much is. There's a lot to learn. I have an open ear. I certainly can learn a lot more. If it's prudent, would bring that out to the audience. So I think that's really important. We're now dialoguing and talking with different scientists who are bringing information, but also some of our political leaders. And there's a pretty bad feeling towards a lot of our political leaders, but some of them do have integrity. Not all of them, I believe, are corrupt. Some people might disagree with me, but I think we're going to see some dramatic changes, within the next couple of years. And I think that's one of the things that we have to, once we gain this knowledge, is really to reach out, gain the understanding, and really, what I've learned recently, to speculate on the motives of people can be dangerous. So I want to talk to a lot of our elected officials, and I have already, more so at the county level. Of course, in the first film, we interviewed a lot of senators and members of Congress, and a lot of them were stated that they were unaware of this. At that time, I didn't believe that was true, but probably now, I'm thinking back then, perhaps they weren't aware of this. And I think a lot of our elected officials, they're very busy. You know, they have a lot on their plate, and this is just one of hundreds, if not thousands, of different issues that come into them over a week. So again, that's one of the areas that we're going to reach out to, you know, and discern what we're being told. And I think it's always important to question as much as we can and find out the truth. And when we become absolutely certain, and I do fully believe in this issue, you know, and that's why I promote it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the, I think you already know that we have a project in our organization called Conscious Action, and we really work with a lot of different activist issues around the world. And one of the things that I've encountered, which I have not encountered as much in the issue of geoengineering, maybe because it's still a very new issue compared to some of the other ones, such as genetically engineered foods, but it's a natural instinct for people to get instantly angry when they realize that this is going on. And personally, I don't believe that being angry ever results in the resolution of the issue. I think we have to take a more balanced approach and a more rational approach, and pursue solutions from a more positive perspective rather than approaching it just from an angry standpoint. And what I'd like to know from you is if you have any thoughts on that, first of all, and secondly, what do you think is the largest obstacle that is standing in the way of progress in this area in making change in this issue?
Well, I think probably the number one thing that I used to hear and still hear once in a while when I speak at screenings is, when I discuss this, people think I'm crazy. And we'll get back to an issue that we were touching upon. And I always ask, what is your approach? And people say, well, I go to people and I say, see those lines in the sky? They're killing all of us. I look at them and they say it in a very angry way. And I said, well, let's discuss ways about how to address this issue. And there are a lot of theories on it. And for instance, if you're in a more affluent area where people are more focused on monetary issues, you can talk about weather derivatives. That's an issue that will connect them to the weather control aspect of this. If you're in an area or in a community that has had a history of oppression, then you could perhaps, if prudent, discuss population issues. I think that's been taken out of context in many of cases, but I'm still willing to learn. But the point being, it's the approach and it's the way that we go about it, and I think that's most effective. And a lot of people believe that you have to tell everybody everything that you know about every issue. And, that's not what we're trying to do. And if you look at Barack Obama's campaign, it was the most effective campaign. Mm-hmm. And it was based on just a couple of simple slogans. Now, his speaking is very eloquent. Of course, that was a major part of it. But to get into the numbers and all of the great details, well, you're going to lose a lot of people with that. And some things are not prudent because people might not have the wisdom or understanding at certain times. So with that being said, I think it's always important in addressing it in a way that your audience, A, is willing to understand, willing to accept, and then move forward in a way that's prudent and rational. And I'd learned that when I was a teacher. I was a teacher, in about, I think, 2006 for about a year and a half. And I taught grammar school, anywhere between 3rd and 8th grade. And I think issues that are new to people that challenge their belief systems are kind of like math. And, the 3rd graders, we could talk about, basic math. But if I brought algebra into that classroom, the students were lost, they were misbehaving, they'd get frustrated, and that's not what we want to do with the population. What we want is an audience, is a number of people who are educated, A, with the truth, and then B, with an effective way to move forward in addressing this that is most prudent. So with that being said, I share what I learn and what I believe in. We're going to learn a whole lot more. There's no question about it, and hopefully share, again, that in a prudent, rational way, and be able to teach people how to address this out in public. And I think that's very important. So it's going to be a very interesting year. We're going to double check our science, go over everything. I want to make sure that everything in the past was completely accurate. If it wasn't, I believe it was, but if we find anything that wasn't, I always think it's absolutely important to be public about that and to say, hey, we were wrong about this. However, this is what we found.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very wise advice.
Yeah, and I don't think that will happen, but I think that's the most important thing when you address an issue that has the ability to impact and move so many people.
Yeah, and if people watched your first film, or the ones out there that have watched it, What in the World Are They Spraying?, they will see you going to the state houses and talking to the representatives in a calm, educated way, and you get ignored a lot, but the thing is, you didn't take no for an answer, and you kept going, and you kept approaching these people. A lot of them walked away, but by the end of the movie, you did get dialogue. You did get conversations with them. They wanted to hear what you're saying, and I think that moving forward, there's going to be more representatives that say, "Hey, what is going on here?"
I think you're right, and there were a couple of members of Congress that did take time to sit down and ask questions and learn about this, and I think that's I couldn't imagine being a rep, the responsibilities that many of them hold. And it's probably pretty overwhelming, and people coming at them with literally hundreds of different questions. But with an issue that is new, but literally affects every living thing on the planet, we're hoping now that we've moved beyond that. And I think if we went back to Washington, we could have a dialogue in a more people would be accepting it in terms of our elected officials. So that might be an approach that we're taking. I don't do outlines for films. That's always, I felt, kind of limiting to a script. So it's just been amazing, the doors that have opened. But I really had, for the film, Dane Wigington was, with the science. He was a mentor and a guide, and he helped me out with a lot of that because, again, it was a new issue. And I think that was one of the reasons why the film was very successful for my first film. Paul Wittenberger and G. Edward Griffin were involved, and Griffin's name was very important because he has a larger audience coming in brand new. But again, it was just somebody asking the basic questions: what is this about? And we did our best to answer in a simplified way that people would accept.
Yeah, knowing those people, it goes back to what you said earlier, and it's knowing your audience and not trying to overwhelm them with a great deal of information, and just telling them what's relevant, and using the key terms of geoengineering and keeping that standardized, because ultimately, this is being done without our knowledge and consent. So I think once people see your films and the dialogue begins to happen, or it happens on a greater scale, I believe that consent is going to be withdrawn by the people.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I had an opportunity to screen Why in the World Are They Spraying at the European Parliament. And it was, it was kind of historic. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of the elected officials showed up, but some did. And that was important. And because of that, I think it shows the opportunities that we have to encourage others to get involved in this, to really have open dialogue. And right now we have, obviously there's a lot of distrust in our elected officials, and I'm still learning, still learning a whole lot, but I think we're going to turn. I think we're almost at a turning point where we will see more open dialogue, more honesty about this issue, and really get a better grasp on what we're dealing with. And with that, this issue that appears to be destroying our forests around the world, appears to be really harming our loved ones. Respiratory mortality jumped, I believe, according to Dane Wigington, from number 8 down to number 3 in just a 6-year period. That's a huge jump. And then we have aluminum-related illnesses going through the roof. In Hawaii, where I live, in the past 10 years, and they've seen just their skies have changed dramatically. The organic farm has seen about a 70% decline in their ability to grow natural organic foods. That can be attributed to a lot, but according to the scientists that I've spoken with, the metals are definitely, what they will do is weaken a plant or a tree. And then, beetles will come in, the fungus is a part of the weakening, and then that tree will die. And what shocked me was I go back to Hawaii about once every, probably 4 to 8 months. And the last time I was there, we probably, in the rainforest in Maui, if you've ever been on Maui, driving up to, on the road to Hana, I would estimate probably about 25% of the forest was dead. It was like wintertime in Nebraska. And I left again for about 4 or 5 months. When I returned, I noticed a significant increase in the decline of our forest. And what amazed me, a lot of people who live there didn't notice it. And the reason was it happened slow in our time, but it's happening very quickly in terms of nature. So it's something that is happening right before our eyes. We're seeing dramatic changes on our planet. In methane appears to be an issue that could be affecting this as well. I know Dane Wigington is very supportive of the methane issue. He believes that geoengineering, while geoengineers state that their programs will actually mitigate global warming, and many people notice, on a nice warm day in the afternoon when the planes come and the trails cover the sun, the temperature will drop about 6 or 7 degrees. However, when those aerosols are up in the sky, they actually trap heat as well. So we've seen, I believe, an increase in nighttime highs, and Dane believes that has an effect on our ice melting. So it could actually be warming the planet. But again, when you look at an issue so vast, so broad, there are a number of objectives that people have. Some may be good, and unfortunately, some may be bad. And that's what we want to look into, and that's what we want to expose. And if there is anything good to these programs, I would definitely support that. I haven't found anything yet, but, again, we're still very new into this issue, and my ears are still open. I think we all have a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do, Michael, when you go outside and they're spraying? Do you just stay inside more often, or do you have some methods you use to reduce the physical effects? And secondly, do you know of any way to filter these materials out of indoor air, such as filtration systems or anything else?
Well, it's submicron particles, so it's very challenging to remove from our air. So once it is sprayed into our environment, it's very difficult, even with a HEPA filter. So some people have spoken about using water filtration systems where the air literally goes through water. I'm not sure if that's effective or not. But, we are inhaling that in what appear to be very heavy spray days. I like to ride my bike. I like to go out walking. Those are days when I stay in. And typically those are the days where we see that heavy spray pattern, where we do not see the sun and the sky is very milky. That's usually right ahead of a storm. So while I want to go out riding during those days because I believe it's going to rain, I've become very accurate at predicting weather due to the aerosol trails. I know it's a little off course, but what we noticed in the first film, we didn't really look at weather control, but what we did notice, about 500 to 700 miles ahead of the storm, these heavy aerosol patterns. And if we go back to what geoengineers are proposing, it's aluminum oxide. And we say that's a very effective metal to put up into our atmosphere, A, because it's lightweight, it'll stay up in the sky longer, but B, it's also very reflective. What they didn't talk about was the fact that it's also a very effective conductor in our sky. So many people are noticing an increase in lightning. We're seeing lightning quite a bit now in Maui, in the regions of Hawaii. That was pretty rare 20 years ago. But the theory is, and what we believe is that they're using, whether it's through HARP technology or even microwave technology, being that our skies do have these metals in them, they have the ability to heat the atmosphere up. And when it heats, it literally creates a low-pressure system and gives these corporations or entities the ability to literally bring moisture, bring rain into certain regions, or in the case of last summer, which really appears to have been an engineered drought, out of certain regions. So it was interesting because in the summertime, we don't see a lot of trails here over California. What we did look at, though, after receiving a number of phone calls and also emails, we looked at satellite, more so Dane and Scott Wigington, and what they had, or Dane Wigington and Scott Stevens, what they noticed, while we didn't have a lot of trails over, the mainland here, we did have the Pacific, which was virtually completely covered almost every day from the equator all the way up to Alaska. And what that did, it prevented the sun from actually hitting the water, which, created the effect of lack of evaporation. So we didn't have the clouds that we normally have. Of course, created a drought. Now we have what's being called the global food crisis. And unfortunately, before this happened, I looked at the stats, in terms of Africa and how many children were dying per day. And it was, I think, 24,000 children, if that stat is correct, per day were dying due to starvation. So it's an issue that literally affects each and every person. And even if money is an issue of somebody, if somebody puts that number one on their list, it is affecting them because it is increasing the price of food. In lower income communities, I've done a lot of work on the south side of Chicago, in Roseland, where Barack Obama did a lot of his activism. In those areas, and I still keep in touch with some people from that area, and it's just amazing when people are living that close to survival based on the monetary system, how that can really affect certain areas, and it's with the benefits being cut, we have some real problems. So I think while things are bad now, sometimes these challenges can be good. Not that I believe that this is good, but I believe that people will grow, will become more conscious, and when the solution does come, and I think it is coming pretty quickly, I think we're just going to see an incredible change in many different systems around the globe.
Yeah, and one thing too, Michael, I did not read this in your bio at the beginning, but you do have a strong history and a passion for community service, and I wanted to have you speak on that to the audience a little bit, because I know you worked with a couple local food banks. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I founded two. One was in Arizona, and
Yes.
we put together a food bank, and then I left. I kind of felt like almost a missionary moving around. I was pretty mobile, and then when I was in Chicago, I put together a food program in that area. Now they're serving thousands of clients a day. I put together the game plan, did the initial structure, but I can't take too much credit. When I'm back in town, I do go into the food banks, and I get an opportunity to serve the clients. One of the most enlightening, though, I also did workforce development at a nonprofit called Community Assistance Programs, and I learned a whole lot, in terms of reaching out to the community, and also, there was a vast difference in the culture. Just in Chicago, you have a lot of segregation within communities, and I think anytime you have an opportunity to go in and learn things from other cultures, I think it's very enlightening, because there's some just valuable incredible things that we can learn, and I think it makes us more round, more whole, and essentially gives us more wisdom. So that has been my background. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor. When I was in college, I was a sociology major, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I really thought I was going to get out of college, sit behind a desk, work maybe 2 hours a day, and tell people what to do. And I quickly found out that was not the case. And I went into sales, and I realized, sales was not my thing. And while I was okay at it, certain jobs I, was in the top 10%. In terms of sales, it just was not my calling. It was when I got into community service, I excelled at that, and it felt good. And I think there's something that certain people are missing, and that's the importance of serving our fellow human beings. Yes. I really do. And I was talking to this young kid today who's kind of going through some transitions, and I told him, I said, and I had a guide. I was fortunate enough, and I said, and he does too. But I said, figure out what your calling is and move within that calling, and just everything comes together. And I think that's very important. So. I encourage people, look into geoengineering. This is literally something that I believe affects each and every one of us, just from the weather control applications that it can be achieved by it. And with that, figure out, is this your issue? And if so, move forward and waking people up. And if it's your calling, you're going to be doing it in a prudent way and in an effective way. And that's what I think is most important. Too often I've been in positions for the wrong reasons, and that can be very damaging, not only for self, but also damaging to other people that you're actually called to be served. So that's a real important thing. So I encourage people to address this, to look into it, and really support our work, because what we're, again, we've learned quite a bit, and what we've learned we don't like. So obviously we want to change it, but there is so much more to learn. So research this, look into this, and I encourage people not to run off with certain theories unless it's proven, because I found early on, anything that was told by certain individuals, I ran with and I spoke with, because those people offered an alternative view from what I had learned. Learned a lot of issues that changed my way of thinking, and that's what I think is most important. Get your facts right, move forward with that. In doing so, I think we can have a tremendous effect in creating the change that we all want to see within the world in terms of this issue.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, you do take the time to do the research, and your research is impeccable, and it's because this is your calling, this is your passion. And I challenge everyone out there listening, if you're an environmentalist or a so-called environmentalist, this needs to be on your radar. This is, like Michael says, it's no greater assault on our planet.
It does, and we're battling, I guess, an issue that was very effectively demonized, as anybody that addresses this issue of chemtrails is being a lunatic or being a kook or whatever term you want to use. And the first film was effective for the people that watched it, in terms of changing people's mind. This is, and that's why it's important to use the term geoengineering. Chemtrails, if you Google it, you look at the first thing that comes up is Wikipedia. It says chemtrail conspiracy theory that has been debunked. Now, are there conspiracy theories? Yes. Are there conspiracy theories that are true? Yes. We have thousands, probably, if not more, every day of conspiracy issues that are addressed in our court system. However, the name conspiracy theory has been effectively demonized. And what I noticed, when people go in with chemtrails or people that have not been introduced to this in the appropriate way, their first reaction is, well, that's conspiracy. And my reaction is like, you're absolutely correct. It is conspiracy. However, conspiracy theory, no, it's from the geoengineering aspect, because that's a well-documented subject, credible scientists from universities. And I think the important thing is now our children are being taught this in our schools, that geoengineering is good. And I haven't really looked at any of the school books, but what we would like is some dialogue in terms of the consequences, what this would have, on our ecosystem, and if that's the desired effect that we want to have.
Yeah, what I see happening is I through your work and the work of all the other great people that are behind this geoengineering, consciousness movement, is the public mind has become aware of it. And I see the local schools especially, and the media saying 5 years before saying it didn't exist, or people that talk about it were kind of strange. And now it's, well, it does exist and we're doing it to save the planet or to combat global warming. So I think it's very important for people to support your film and other people doing things like this in the field, because they're the ones that are getting the truth out there.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, because when before the film, we did have Clifford Carnicom, I think, has done some quality research. I haven't looked at it, but I have heard, it was pretty credible. But if you don't have your research, your facts in line, what we've seen in a number of issues are just theories. I mean, some which are believable and some which are very outrageous. So you really want to avoid that. And some truths, to certain issues. We're not looking to, and some people misunderstand what I'm stating by this, but we're not looking to tell everything that we have learned. And the reason for this is what we're looking to do is our goals, our objectives are to get a dialogue out, to get the truth out, and get people to start talking about this and finding out what the truth is. And in doing so, not only do we have, people in the world addressing this issue, like in Maui, we have political officials who are now addressing this. They're looking at it and looking for solutions. And that's exactly what we want. So again, it's not tell every truth that you know. Some people think secrets are bad. And I would disagree with that. Secrets can be good if they're in the best interest of the planet as a whole. Now, if they're used to deceive people, or if they're used to for self-interest, no, secrets in that capacity are bad. And I think a lot of people confuse that. So there's been a lot of within the movements, and I think the most damaging thing that you see with people who are discussing this are people who address this, who attack the way that other people address this, and getting back into, I can't stress the importance of being in the place of your calling. And when you're there, you will know it. But I think it's also important not to judge others for what their calling may be, because oftentimes I found myself, and I've learned a lot of great lessons, do not judge unless you have all the facts. And that's one of the things I'm learning to practice. And so talking about who in the world is spraying, it's, the first films were exciting. The second one, we wanted to bring in better quality and more quality information. This one is a little concerning because I don't know where we're going with this. I don't know what we're going to find. I don't know what our funding is going to be. And there are a lot of different factors within this. And if we find something that contradicts something that one of the other films says, that has to be addressed. So those are all important issues, and the uncertainty is a little concerning. But, again, I'm pretty sure that we're called to address this. Any help, any guidance from anybody, who has learned something or could help us gain a better comprehension of this, we're open to it. Barry Kulski and I.
Ethan, I'd like to turn it over to you and get some points, if you have any, for Michael.
Well, I want to let our listeners know that Michael's, we're going to be showing your movie at our expo this October, and you'll be available to answer any questions. And in addition, we're arranging for you to show your movie and give some presentations at local universities and high schools as well while you're in town. But I'd like you to maybe let everyone know where they can get a copy of your films or watch them, and if you have a website where they can learn more about you and your work and also donate to your next film.
Absolutely. For Why in the World Are They Spraying, you can go to whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com. We are the prime distributor. There are other distributors that you can go to, but it was Barry Kulski and I who produced Why in the World Are They Spraying, and both of us are moving forward together for the final film, which I hope is the final film, and that will be Who in the World is Spraying. So you can go to whointheworldasspraying.com. There's also a link again on whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com, and we encourage people to make copies and hand out for free. We of course we don't encourage people to profit from our work because we put our money back into a lot of it, back into the movement. So it's important that we can be funded. So if you copy it, we do have a rule: hand it out for free and share it with people. So that's closing. I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity really to address this, and I'm hoping to be a wiser man next time we interview, and have learned a lot more things, and hopefully I can share those with you at that time.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much, guys, and hey, keep looking up.
All right.
As Scott Stevens says.
That's right.
That was his term. Thank you so much.
The contents of this interview, or from Awake and Empowered Expo LLC from Ethan Fox and Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution, is for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the viewpoints held by these organizations or individuals. Always consult with your doctor or health professional before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, or prescription drug use. Please understand that you assume all responsibility and risk for the use or misuse of this information.